This just dropped. Harvard's Professor Claudine Gay, who is also now the president of the university, at least as of this morning, has resigned. Nominally, it was about the plagiarism issues, where this woman appears like she's been plagiarizing a good portion of the articles that she's ever written. But it also comes in the aftermath of this debate about campus free speech. Now, here's my view. One lesson is affirmative action is not only bad in college admissions, it's bad in college university president hiring. If this was a person who was hired for affirmative action, it became a lot harder to fire her, but thankfully the right result was reached and she stepped aside. But where does Harvard go forward from here? That's the real question. You're going to have the people who say that they need a president who takes a stronger stand against anti-Semitic speech. I view it differently. I think we need a president who takes a stronger stand for free speech of Harvard, and also a president of the United States who does the same thing. So I'm going to do my part, and I hope Harvard's board steps up too. Free speech, baby.
Buckle up, we have a lot to discuss on this video. Disclose TV sent this out new. AP falsely claimed that pointing out plagiarism is a new consecutive weapon against colleges. This is insane. I have seen a lot of videos circulate on social media where these people are going off on consecutive for reasons I don't get it. Pointing out racism while Claudine Gay was removed, she resigned after Twitter had to fact-check this. Claudine Gay was ultimately forced to resign for a series of breaches of this policy. Plagiarism is a breach of rules for Harvard University, therefore cannot be considered a weapon. That is Twitter fact-checking AP article putting out to put the blame on consecutive.
The obsession y'all have with humbling Black women. The obsession y'all have with humbling Black women. The obsession, the clinical obsession y'all have with humbling.
Harvard's first ever Black president just resigned. She served the shortest tenure in its 388-year history, and I want to talk to you about it. My name's Deja. I'm a first-generation college student and a recent graduate of a different Ivy League school. She did so after plagiarism accusations. This is the piece from the New York Times. And what I'm going to say is about her, but it's also about something bigger. And that is that as we see these women of color, who are the firsts to take up leadership positions within these institutions that were built to exclude them, we are also watching the spectacle of their takedown. I mean, just a quick look at the most liked comments on this New York Times post says it all. Women like Claudine Gay are left unprotected by these institutions that they have been tasked to serve and represent, in spite of a history of white men who have held the same leadership positions and done even greater harms and been enabled and protected by those very same institutions. The double standard couldn't be more clear. I think this is a really valuable perspective on it. Pause to read the rest. This is infuriating. It was never about plagiarism or anti-Semitism. It was about anti-Blackness and humbling Black leaders who don't show up in the ways others feel necessary. This is not surprising. And we can't miss the nuance that this happens especially to Black women. And I worry about what we're seeing in this wave of firsts and their subsequent takedowns. And I wonder, who is this spectacle for? I think there's an obvious first answer, which is the people who have traditionally held power, who get to point to this in their privileged positions and say, I told you so. And maybe more insidiously, I think there is an audience of young women and girls of color watching this, who are being intimidated by the narrative that if they stick their head up, it will almost certainly be cut off, and that the only way out of it is to be absolutely perfect, which is 1, impossible, and 2, unfair. It says it's your fault for not being perfect and not the institution's fault for setting you up to fail. It says that you should have been immune to the problems you're trying to fix. Maybe most stingingly, it tells young women of color that they are disposable. And to me, that represents the danger of our current status of inclusion, that succeeds at representation, but fails at systemic change and support for the women of color that enter those institutions.
So some representatives in Congress had called Dr. Gray, the president of Harvard, the president of MIT, and the president from the University of Pennsylvania to ask them some questions about anti-Semitism on their campus. And so Representative Stefanik had her little mic drop moment, and she was like, okay, ask all 3 presidents. Okay, cool. So do y'all think that students on your campus should be punished if they ask for the G-diggity of Jews? And so I guess Congress was expecting all 3 presidents to be like, of course, some people gotta go, they up out of here, peace, pack your bags, hit the road, Jack. But that's not what happened. All three presidents, in fact, gave the constitutionally appropriate answer of it depends on the context. So after all the conservative haters ran that clip through the mud, Harvard's board was like, okay, cool, y'all can be mad all y'all want to, but we still standing beside Dr. Gay, so y'all gonna have to let that go. And then after that, all of a sudden, the citation police was knocking at Dr. Gay door. So when the citation police pulled up on Dr. Gay, Harvard was like, all right, cool, don't trip. We're going to do an internal investigation and see what's going on, and we're going to go from there. So, mind you, Dr. Gay did get her PhD from Harvard. So anyways, Harvard did a little internal citation investigation or whatever, and I was like, okay, so we ain't going to hold you. It is some places where she probably could have proofread a little better. You know what I'm saying? She probably wrote this piece probably, like the day before it was due or something like that, but it wasn't really nothing in there that's really donors for Harvard University who was like, okay, well, we're not giving the school no more money then. So basically, Dr. Gay put out a letter and was like, you know what, I'm just going to bow down gracefully, and we're just going to leave it at that, and y'all can figure out how y'all want to move from here. And Harvard don't have no replacement for her yet. People always want to talk about how racism and slavery is part of America's dirty history, but it's starting to feel like it's filthy present. Black women in this country always have to be perfect. And then when we do get as close as humanly possible to perfection, it's always some mediocre wet wipe going and digging up our 1 and 2 flaws out the grave. And yet, if we had to go toe-to-toe when it came to real accomplishments, you could never see me. But yet, as soon as we say our name is Kunta and not Toby, all of a sudden we got to humbly quit our jobs, or we got to keep our composure while people who are not even remotely on our level talk to us crazy just so we can get a seat on the Supreme Court. How did they just say?
And other woke leftist outreach over resignations of Harvard president calling for a black president to be put up to replace her. I don't get the point why this issue of racism is playing a greater role in this. This lady sent this out when white people are higher in any positions. The automatic assumption is they were the best person. When black people are higher, it assumed we got there for because of affirmations actions, which by the way does not mean underqualified. If affirmative actions never existed, a lot of white people would still believe deeply in their own superiority because that is what they have been taught. Considering there have been 30 presidents at Harvard, and Claudine Gay was the only black one in history, she had to be extremely qualified to even be in that position. But don't let me interfere with your racism. Go off. A lot of liberals are going after consecutive. Greek Foreman reply, has anybody ever questioned if Ben Carson is one of the greatest neurology surgeons ever despite being black? This is somebody, it's a black content creator trying to point out their hypocrisy. Ben Carson is a black person. Vivi sent this out. Claudine Gay's rise to Harvard president was not doubt in part the result of affirmative action, but a more interesting dimension is how it reflects the rise of bureaucrat over intellectual at top university. Over 2 decades, Gay published just 10 articles and 0 books. Harvard Prof. Roland published more in a single year than Gay did in her entire career, yet she tried to touch him for his known academic failure. Hell, I'm not even an academic, but in the last 2 years, wrote 3 books and published more articles than Gay did in 2 decades. It wasn't just the rise of intersectionality that propelled Gay to the top of Harvard. It's a deeper cultural shift in our country that favors bureaucrats over creators and administrators over intellectuals that has infected nearly every major institution in American life. We miss the deeper point if we focus only in the race, gender, DEI dimension, which is as much as assumptions as it on the line. That is Vivi sending out a message pertaining to what is going on